If you're using SharePoint as your database just because it is included in the Microsoft 365 suite, you might already be building technical debt. And the worst part? You won't realize it until your app becomes critical. Choosing between SharePoint and Dataverse isn't a connector decision. It is an architectural decision. Today, I'll break down when to use SharePoint or Dataverse and how to avoid this mistake so you don't end up migrating from SharePoint to Dataverse out of necessity. Let's start with Microsoft SharePoint. SharePoint Online is primarily used for a collaborative platform, a document management system, and a structured content storage solution. So yes, it does have lists. Yes, Power Apps connects to it really easily. And yes, it does work. SharePoint lists can scale into millions of items, but you must design around a couple of things. There is the 5,000 list item view threshold, unique permissions limit. It supports up to 50,000, but we recommend it to be much lower. Permission inheritance constraint after 100,000 items. The issue isn't storage, it's behavior and governance at scale. So SharePoint works best for collaborative-driven solutions. SharePoint sounds great, but this is where it becomes challenging. SharePoint allows item-level permissions, but they operate within the unique permission scope model, that it works for limited scenarios. It does not scale cleanly for enterprise-grade record segmentation. SharePoint also supports lookup columns, but lookup columns are not the same as enforced relational behavior. There are no foreign key constraints. There is also limited cascading behavior. No structured relational enforcement. At small scale, it is very manageable. At system scale, it's risky. Now let's look at Microsoft Dataverse. Dataverse is built for applications. It supports formal table relationships, configurable cascading behavior, role-based security, record-level access, column-level access, native auditing, solution-based ALM. Security is layered. Access is governed by roles, business units, ownership, and sharing. This is application-first architecture. The biggest mistake I see is organization starts with SharePoint because it is included. Then the app grows and it becomes revenue impacting. Compliance matters, security get complex, and now migration becomes necessary. So a migration from SharePoint to Dataverse usually requires rebuilding the relationships, redesigning security, updating flows, reworking reporting, revalidating ownership models. That's not just data movement, that's re-architecture. So here's how to avoid this mistake so you don't end up migrating from SharePoint to Dataverse out of necessity. Before you build, ask, is this a collaborative tool or is this becoming a system of records? If it is likely to require structured security, business process enforcement, audit trails, cross-department visibility, scaled relationships, start with Dataverse. If it is lightweight, document-driven, department level, SharePoint is completely appropriate. If you're currently thinking about migrating from SharePoint to Dataverse, I already created a full video on 10 lessons learned moving from SharePoint Online to Dataverse. Watch that next. It will save you some time. Here are some examples for using SharePoint as the backend, such as department intake apps. For example, HR equipment requests, facility move requests, or marketing creative requests. All of this includes a simple structure, where we have the intake list with optional comments. So the Power App, it handles create, attach file, or track statuses with some basic dashboard. That is SharePoint sweet spot. Another example, such as team task tracking, operative task, Q&A punch list, or weekly checklist, very lightweight, filterable, and shareable. Not enterprise service management. Another example is having a knowledge or policy directory, such as runbooks, SOPs, or metadata-driven document libraries, content governance, not transactional enforcement. And here are the examples for Dataverse, such as enterprise case management about complaints, fraud investigation, escalations. It requires a lot of one-to-many relationships, role-based security, SLA timers, auditing, ownership model, just a system of records, right, in the back end. Another example, it would be vendor risk and compliance. So about vendors, risk assessment, controls, remediation plan, a lot of many-to-many relationships, calculation fields, column level security, or full audit history, a very governance heavy solutions. Another one is a multi-department service portal. Different SLAs, different case types, different visibility rules, security roles, and ownerships become really critical. SharePoint item level permissions, this does not scale well from here. If you have reached to this part of the video, please comment 3 purple hearts because purple is my favorite color. So I know you have watched it and I will heart your comment. As my rule of thumb, if it enhances collaboration, choose SharePoint. If it behaves like a system, choose Dataverse. So design your data model first. Architects things data first. These are the best practices of what I see and what Microsoft recommends. It doesn't mean it's only a SharePoint or Dataverse solution. So every solution is a little bit more unique, right? Sometimes I would have SharePoint using the document management system in the backend and a Dataverse solution where they kind of integrate with each other. So these are just recommendations. Doesn't mean you have to do it like this. It doesn't mean that you can't use SharePoint lists similar to Dataverse. I'm not saying you can't at all. I'm just saying these are the best practices, and sometimes we got to work with what we got. So we can't have an enterprise app in SharePoint or something like that, but it's going to take more work to imitate it more like Dataverse when it is technically not there. So it just depends on how you want to scale and where your company is. Or sometimes some clients want to use a lot of Dataverse because they already is licensed and they don't want to use SharePoint, which I get. They want to have more control of the ALM process, which is totally understandable. So it's not always one or another. Sometimes you really have to give yourself a pros and cons list and what you're okay dealing with. So that is just my 2 cents. And there you have it. I hope this video is helpful. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell icon to follow for more updates.